Welcome back. This is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this is the call to the Brewman's Bottle.
The call to the Brewman's Bottle.
So we're sitting here full of excitement, barely able to contain ourselves. It's day 2 of E3, and we are chomping at the bit to get down and talk to you guys about all of the awesome stuff that we've seen on all the different elements of E3 coverage that we've been able to find. I've been sitting around watching a lot of IGN's live feeds, as well as some of the live feeds that I've been able to find in YouTube, and I'm just overwhelmed with all the things that I want to talk to you guys about, and I know Matt is as well. So we're going to take this whole episode to focus entirely on E3 coverage. To kick it all off, I wanted to talk just a little bit about E3 in general. This year, E3 has been extremely special, in my opinion, because almost every single teaser, almost every single ounce of coverage has been just a barbed hook for me. Don't you agree, Matt?
I completely agree.
I've just been sitting here all day just watching stuff thinking, oh my gosh, everybody that listens to the podcast is going to be so excited. I hope they're watching these things. So in the end of this podcast, I hope that we can just direct you at some awesome content that these developers are putting out this year. And I know every year E3 is just all kinds of hopes that seem to be dashed against the rocks of the ocean that is gaming. But this time, as with every time, there is so much hope inside of me for this coming year in gaming. One thing that's really stood out to me that the developers are promising this year is it seems like every single conference has a theme of continued support for the games that they're going to be putting out. People are seeing the response to games getting DLC and different things that you can go into the marketplace and grab onto because you're really in love with the game, and they're going to continue to put out that kind of content. And that gets me real excited because coming into gaming as an MMO gamer, expansions and things are just second nature to me. And the developers are catching on through the console games and every other type of game and coming up with every single kind of expansion or upgrade that you can consider. Not only that, but one of the other big focuses this year that I've seen is the focus in open world gaming. Matt, I know that means a whole bunch to you because Minecraft and the entirety of the open world sandbox game is something that you in particular as a gamer have fallen in love with in your career with gaming.
I'm glad that you can recognize that because Minecraft really is in my heart. It's simple, it's to the point, and it's a sandbox in the end, like you said.
Well, it brings back that playing with blocks nostalgia of childhood, and it really gets at the part of your brain that wants to dissect everything and overanalyze things. And throughout E3, I've seen developers of some of our favorite styles of games coming out with world-building tools that they're going to have within their game, that they're going to have attached to their games in certain types of tool sets. And it seems like everybody is just jumping on board with this concept of not only do we want to play with your game, but we want to build with your game as well. Another thing that I've seen a whole bunch of developers focusing on are the mobile platforms, which this isn't something that I've necessarily really jumped on board with, and I know you haven't either, but it really does kind of pique a small interest in me that there are big-name developers getting involved with mobile games. And it's really a neat thought process to think, man, one day you're going to be able to just be walking around and have a really awesome either JRPG or awesome RTS made by some of your favorite RPG developers set in the same worlds and things like that on your mobile device, whether it's your tablet or your cell phone or whatever, and you're going to be able to just whip it out and play it while you're waiting to get your oil changed or whatever. And that seems really, really awesome to me in general for gaming.
How would you say mobile gaming from when you first picked up a smartphone 5 or 6 years ago till now has changed for you in your viewpoints?
Well, I was late onto the scene personally with smartphones. I don't know about you, but when I finally got one, my brother had just dove headlong into the marketplace of these games. And so I got really, I guess, baptized in mobile gaming with my smartphone, and I thought it was really, really cool. And then all the way up until Clash of Clans, I was into that. And then I dropped off because I felt like I was wasting a lot of time that I could be spending on the MMO that I was playing or whatever other games I was really getting into. So I'd have to say that from the beginning to now, I'm probably the opposite of most people, where I was really, really into mobile gaming, and then I said, nah, it's really not for me. And E3 this year is kind of firing me back up for mobile gaming. How would you say your mobile gaming experience has gone in your, I guess, acquisition of a smartphone?
I'm the same with you, Josh. I didn't come into the smartphone scene until about 4 or 5 years ago. I really didn't care for it. I didn't care to spend that much money for the beginner products. I always had a flip phone for a while. And the games on a flip phone, like a really nice, bright, and vibrant 2D game, that was the way to go. But nowadays, the handhelds are looks like smartphone games.
Absolutely. And I even like you just said, the handhelds look like smartphone games and the smartphone games look like handheld games. And that is just a really neat concept to me that I feel like these developers are really starting to get into, and I can't wait for them to get me back into it, because it was just a bunch of marketplace shenanigans for a long time on the mobile devices. And to have developers coming in for the quality of a game, maybe it'll get me back in. When it comes to a handheld and stuff like that, I've always been on board with handhelds. The PS Vita is really cool, but I'm a Nintendo junkie for my handhelds, and that's just the way I'm going to be. But I want to go ahead and let's just dive right into some games, man. So, Matt, tell me about a game that I know everybody wants to hear.
All right, the first game that we're going to talk about, guys, is Fallout 4. Everyone here wants to play it, including me and Josh, so we might as well go ahead and get it out of the way. I'm going to give you a lot of info, so just hold on to your hats. They've been working on this game for close to 7 years now. It started after Fallout 3 released in 2008. The only reason that they didn't put full and honest detail into it when it comes to info publicly is because of Skyrim. And we can't doubt them for that, because Skyrim was an excellent game.
I'm definitely glad they put the amount of focus into Skyrim that they did.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So, Fallout 4. The artwork detailed down to every single button and blinking light is critiqued. They really focused on before and after to give you a great rendering look physically. So the gameplay begins before the bombs fell. The detail on your characters between male or female, because it is your choice. I was wrong. I thought you actually played a specific guy, but you do get to choose your gender. But the detail is very minute. It's not based on a category system as much as it's based on a point, click, and change system.
Right. They've gotten rid of sliders entirely, haven't they?
Correct. They've even mentioned that the baby that you and your wife have, or you and your husband have, is physically based off of what you make them look like.
Wow.
So you are the sole survivor of Vault 111. You are based in the Boston area. It is the Vault 111 from the rumors in Fallout 3 in New Vegas. Everyone knows that is one of the only vaults that was actually sealed completely from the top. You actually access the outside world from a cogged hatch instead of a wooden door.
And it was also one of the last vaults, because the last vault ever sealed was 112, right? And 111 is probably one of the more technically advanced vault as well.
Vault 111 was so great to the players in recent games because of the cryogenic system that it had.
Right.
Everyone was able to be frozen instead of having to live side by side for years.
And that allows where the game is actually 200 some odd years after the war.
Correct. And like I said, you are the sole survivor. So, you come out. Player freedom is number one goal. So everything, everywhere, everyone that you interact with is based entirely on you. Everything is physically rendered to the most realistic, artistic look possible. So what they did is they took a lot of art that they made up for before the war, and then from that art, they transferred it into what it would look like 200 years later.
Wow.
You do get a dog companion. His commands are completely point and click and are all based on what you do. If you want him to pick up an item, if you want him to go somewhere, it's all up to where you actually point your cursor at.
Well, not only with the dog is it like that, but I noticed in the conference where they mentioned that the entirety of the commands throughout this new Fallout game are going to be situational like that, to where when you put your cursor in the old games, you would always be, A to pick up, so on and so forth. As you're moving throughout the game, not only are your dog's options going to change, but your own options for everything that you're doing are going to change.
Correct. And the interactions that you have are seamless as well. In the middle of conversations, if you don't feel like talking, or if you feel like you want to go do something else, or even if you want to shoot them directly in the face, you can. Yeah. There's no lock-in with the interaction with people. It's completely seamless.
I heard that, and I'm not going to lie to you, Matt. I had never considered how that may disrupt my feel of immersion within the game until they mentioned that it's no longer going to be there.
I really like where you're coming from, Josh, because the more seamless they start to make these new games, the more interactive it feels that you're actually doing with stuff within it.
Right, that you're a member of this ecosystem in your computer or whatever.
So, speaking of what you said earlier with customizing and whatnot, there's a new layered armor system now. The Pip-Boy screen is fully interactive. It looks realistic. It feels realistic. The VAT system is also a slow-down game. You can select body parts like you could before. It looks great. It feels great. There's a new building edition as well that gives you the ability to construct new buildings, guys. There's new buildings, new defenses, and even energy generators like lights, or if you need to run fully automatic robots. Regardless, what I'm telling you is you can create your own homesteads. You can create your own fortresses, your own outposts.
Right, like what we were talking about in the beginning, with them taking from this, and it all feels so reminiscent to Minecraft, so taking from this open world sandbox Minecraft-esque builder system, they said in their conference that they're going to take the engine that they use to build the game and allow you a certain amount of influence on it, because it's just easy that way, and it adds that immersion, that seamless involvement of your character controlling the world that you're in. And with their revamping their customization system in this game to add that type of a build system, it seems so natural. And I couldn't have dreamed of anything better for Fallout.
I really like how it is seamless, and I like how everything that you build and everything that you customize is in real time. The larger that you get, NPCs will start to flock to your new safe havens. Raiders will attack you, so you need to focus on defenses and how you actually build these places. You can even run Brahmin caravans between the outposts.
It just seems like they're building the Fallout world that I feel like we alluded a small bit to in the last breakdown that we did of Fallout.
It's almost like they're playing with you. In the first and second Fallouts, it was an RTS. So it's almost like it's an RTS on the ground to a certain degree. There's a sliver of that in the game.
I mean, we could almost call them world builder RPGs, and it's like they're a completely new thing. One thing that you alluded to a little bit was how your influence on the Pip-Boy is going to be expounded upon. One thing that I want to make sure that we mention in this breakdown is the app that they're coming out with to go along with your smartphone.
Why don't you go ahead and tell me about that?
There is an app that they're putting out. The collector's edition is going to come with a Pip-Boy. And with the Pip-Boy, you're going to be able to flip it open and stick your smartphone in it. And they're going to make an app for your smartphone that makes your smartphone function as a Pip-Boy, just like any other Pip-Boy in the game would function. And I mean, obviously it looks like a smartphone in a case. But what really got my jollies on this was the fact that they made it seem like, and I'm not going to say that they came out and said this, but they definitely made it seem like this smartphone app was going to be able to integrate with the game and function as your Pip-Boy. That's definitely the way they made it seem. And if it's not like that, it's actually going to connect to the game in some way, shape, or form. And they did say in the conference that the app is seamless and working wonderfully. And that just is such an exciting prospect to me. I love the thought of having a real-life involved controller like that to function with my inventory, and I hope I'm not mistaken in my interpretation of it.
So back to the customization. Yes, you can build all these new structures, and it is crazy and it's great. Let's go back to the traditional crafting system that they have. It involves every single item in the game. So if you want to build something, all those useless items that you used to look through countless houses and trash cans and mailboxes and ruins, though some of those, if not all, every single one of them can be made in some way to another item. So you have 50 based weapons now with 700 customizable add-ons to them.
Right, and I just can't put enough emphasis like you just did on the fact that they're taking all these trash items that used to exist within the game and they're making them mean something to you. They showed a picture of their current craft system, which obviously it may change as it moves forward. But the way they had it broken down is that you were looking for the more baser components within the trash that you were picking up, such as the duct tape equals adhesive, as well as glue equals adhesive. So finding duct tape and glue could be the way that you go about building whatever it is that you're looking to build. And I think that when it comes to the games that Bethesda has put out with the Elder Scrolls and Skyrim, they have all these trash items, and it feels like they've been looking for ways to make them make sense and make them worth something. Skyrim did a nice job of upgrading it, but it looks like Fallout 4 is going to be the real deal. Perfection of that item system.
Completely perfection. Also, now that you can completely customize your own power armor as well. This game is going to be great. You start the game before the bombs fell, and then you fall right back into the traditional Fallout gaming.
Right, and one thing that you hit on that I just want to cap off before we move on from it is you were talking about how the world that you're going to see it before the bombs fall and you're going to come in after the bombs fall. Well, Bethesda, I think, has listened to a lot of their fans and talking about, and they said this in the conference, that, or at least the coverage of the conference that I watched, but that Bethesda in the past has been told, well, your game isn't very colorful, and you think to yourself, well, it's post-apocalyptic. It's not going to be very colorful. You're dealing with nuclear waste and so on. They're bringing weather effects in. You're over 200 years after the actual war. So the concept that they might be able to bring in certain weather effects that only exist in a post-nuclear Holocaust world is just breathtaking to me. And not only that, but they're able to bring in the blue skies again and the foliage that's beginning to grow back. And you're very obviously walking through a forest that was blown up, but it's a forest that's regrowing after it's been blown up. And it's just going to be a spectacular game. If you haven't had the chance to sit down and watch some of these gameplay videos and breakdowns that we're referring to, just search YouTube, you'll find them. Next on the list of games that we just had to hit up for you, obviously it's going to be on the list, is Doom. Doom is also one of those games that just goes way back to the nostalgic front with both Matt and myself. I played Doom, honestly, I think it may have been the very first computer game I ever played in my life.
It was the first PlayStation 1 game I actually ever played, just about.
It was definitely the first first-person shooter I ever played. But they're taking Doom to a whole new level. They already, in my opinion, have taken Doom to a whole new level, and they're doing it again. The things that I really want to focus on in the breakdown of what we found out about Doom at E3 this year was that it really looks like a great throwback to the run and gun feel that Doom had in its heyday. That you're just fighting back hordes of demons. And I'm not just saying that for the traditional campaign gameplay. They're going to bring in multiple different types of horde modes that are possibly able to be happening in this game. And they're also bringing in all the old toys from the old games that you like to just blow these demons up with, and you're going to go to hell just like some of the old games have done. You know, you go back and you fight the demons where they're from, and just the art of the landscape in the last Doom game, it really pales in comparison to what they're doing in the new one. And the demons, man, they look scary. They're coming at you with guns and claws and all this crazy stuff. It's just really looking like it's going to be one of those games that just keeps you on the edge of your seat visually throughout. One of the things also that they were focusing on was the multiplayer of this Doom. Doom multiplayer I has never really hit with me. Did you ever get down on a lot of multiplayer when you played Doom, Matt?
No, when I think Doom, I think one man against an army of demons, man.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're bringing in multiplayer to this, which these are the same type of things that you would think from like Unreal Tournament or Quake or something like that. But it really seems like it's going to be a lot of fun with their bringing in the old style tournament strategy that has been abandoned in Modern Warfare and the new first person shooters that are out, where you're hitting power ups, you're getting armor bonuses, and you're really learning to dominate the map based on your experience as a player. And I really liked it. Watching old Unreal Tournament competitive gameplay used to be so much fun, and watching Fatality play Quake, I loved it when I was a kid, and this type of multiplayer is a real throwback to that. In talking about the multiplayer, I wanted to go ahead and mention something that they had a pretty nice little showcase on in the conference, and it was their Doom Snap Map in-game tool set for game and map building, for mod content to be produced regardless of platform, that all the players can get on and generate content. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't the normal type of tool set you might be thinking of. They're letting you do literally everything in building these maps. If you go and you watch the video of the breakdown of what they're doing, they're allowing you to cause spawns of certain NPCs in the maps so that you can make different type of, like I said a second ago, horde mode experiences and so on and so forth. They're bringing in ways for you to make newer games, which makes me think of like Little Big Planet, where you're going to end up with games that the developers never considered, didn't even think in a million years would be made, but they're giving you the tools to do it, which this, yet again, in a game that I don't know about you, Matt, but never caught me as though it would do this, is throwing the world builder in and letting the player get involved in what they're trying to have participation in.
Thinking about world editor inside of a Doom game is almost mind-boggling. How do you think that's going to change the gameplay?
Well, like I said, I think it's going to bring in brand new games that nobody ever considered would happen. Not only that, but I think it's going to allow the players to manipulate more within the game, to where you have people who play the game less for their ability to actually shoot people and get kills and win games, but more because they want to get creative and they want to build something almost that causes the same thing that causes the Dungeons and Dragons player to go from player to DM and stay there. It's going to be the same type of thing. I think it's going to change the way we view how a first-person shooter should be presented to us.
So, what is the background for this new Doom? Is it still on Mars?
It's the same thing that it's always been, and I can't stress how awesome that is to me, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. Okay, there's the whole idea that you're a Marine pitted against the armies of hell. They are taking with the whole Mars thing, with Mars being a gateway to hell, and that's what these ruins on Mars are. But you're set up as a Marine that's on a base on Mars that has been activated in active duty to destroy demons. That's why you're there. And there's just doesn't seem like there's much more to it than that. And to be perfectly honest with you, Matt, I don't think there has to be, does there?
No. So, your first impression, how great does the gameplay look?
Honestly, man, it's everything I wanted when I thought of a Doom game. I feel like they're bringing in the horror aspect, they're bringing in the run and gun, and just the whole immersion in deep combat against demons. Top notch.
So after Doom, let's touch a little bit on Star Ocean. Oh, by the way, let's go ahead. I'm sorry, we'll go back real quick. I forgot to mention this as well. Fallout 4 will be released in November of 2015. Doom will be released in 2016 in the spring.
Right. We're going to try to give you as much information on the release for both the platform as well as the date of the games that we're talking about right now. And sorry, we kind of forgot that.
The next game will be Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness. Now, for the people that have played Star Ocean before, they said a lot of the core aspects of this game will be the same. This will be released in a PlayStation exclusive. It comes out in 2016. Now, like all the other Star Oceans, you will have almost an unlimited amount of different areas, monsters, and events to run into. The seamless cutscenes between the events, the battles, and the exploration will be great for the game, and also will add to the constant world interaction that you will have.
So this was my personal first exposure to a Star Ocean game ever, and it didn't really seem like they gave me a whole lot in the particular conference that I looked at, but I have seen Star Ocean games played in the past, so I guess it wouldn't be my first exposure ever, but my first real interest, it was friends playing Star Ocean. They said in the conference that I watched, and you said it too, that seamlessness was something that was going to be paramount in this game, and the person they had speaking on it actually said himself that in the past, Star Ocean has been more about the storytelling and would sacrifice seamlessness in order to do the storytelling aspects, and they're moving away from that. They want you to be able to run straight into combat, and they're even going to change a little bit of the way they're going to do cutscenes.
I'll say this. One of our close friends, William Turney, played the Star Ocean back on the GameCube, and he was able to satisfy himself with almost 6 months of playing on the same game.
Right on. It looks like the quintessential JRPG, which anybody that knows me knows that I'm going to love that. I'm a Final Fantasy guy. I love the JRPG. I've played a lot more than I can name to you, and I really want to add this Star Ocean, and maybe waiting for Star Ocean, this one to come out, maybe add some other Star Oceans, because it seems like this is something I've really missed out on.
If you really like Final Fantasy style games, you would really like to play any type of Star Ocean. Not to mention the new battle system, where they tried to add a fluidity to it. So if you've ever heard of a game called, and for the listeners as well, Eternal Sonata, where it's almost a time and turn-based system simultaneously.
Well, to me, it looked a lot like a throwback in the videos to Final Fantasy XII, which I know you've told me in the past that you hadn't really played that one that much, if at all. But what it was is that it's like they take the turn-based system and give you that as an option. But you can also just run in and hack and slash. And this seemed like it wasn't really an option to do the turn-based system as much as it was more of a marriage of the two. And it really looks cool because that's going to allow you to do a lot of the special abilities and stuff, like the way it seemed like almost like Kingdom Hearts runs, which we'll talk a little bit about Kingdom Hearts later on. But the Star Ocean really seemed like a great RPG and something that's going to be really refreshing for the genre, because I can't remember off the top of my head the last one that really caused waves over here in the West.
So, Star Ocean sounds great, but let's move on to the next game. Speaking of PS4, why don't you tell me a little bit about No Man's Sky, Josh?
Okay, I'm going to tell you more than a little bit about No Man's Sky, even though that a little bit is really all that we can say is known about it. We've talked at length about talking about No Man's Sky on the podcast before, and we've always said we're going to wait till they release something big until we bring it up. And I feel like this year at E3, they released about 5.5 minutes, if that, of gameplay from No Man's Sky, and that is more than enough for me to want to bring it up. So to start with, I want to talk about No Man's Sky along the lines of what's been a running theme throughout this episode as well as E3, and that's the open world builder game that everybody is chomping at the bit for right now. No Man's Sky takes that to the next level. When you say world builder, No Man's Sky says universe builder. And they say that this game is going to be so vast and so large that they don't expect the entirety of it to be discovered. That when you're sitting there playing it, it'll be highly possible for you to just not run into anything or anyone for quite a while. And that's a really neat concept. But what gets me even more is the fact that the AI in this game, or just the world itself and the way that it interacts with you, is immense. So I'm going to start from square one, and what they've always shown is that in No Man's Sky, you start off in a spaceship. I don't know if that's going to be the way the game starts off, but in every preview they show you, you start off in this spaceship, and you're in orbit on this wonderful, magnificent scene of a planet that's rotating around an unknown sun, and there's almost always starships or satellites or something in orbit around this planet. That's because anywhere in this universe, there's all kinds of AI factions, different conflicts going on between maybe trade disputes or whatever throughout this universe and the exchange of resources, so that there's always something going on wherever you go. You can always go and interact with the environment wherever you're going. And from what they've said, the whole objective is to upgrade your hyperdrive to cause you, and this is just released in this last video, to be able to reach the center of the universe. And so we've talked about how vast and everything this game is. The next thing that I want to talk about is that this game is also going to go down to the minute detail, which, if you bend your brain a little bit, can be equally as vast as the grand detail when they talk about the universe that they're building. The minute detail that they're going to have is not only in this world builder thought process that any one of these planets that you go to, you can fly down through the atmosphere and land on the planet and destroy anything, discover new species, which they'll all have unique species. Some of them may look like other ones, but they'll all be evolved species on these planets, and so on and so forth. That'll all be unique, and you can destroy and rebuild and research and find out all these different things. And it gets all the way down to just the most small detail that I can think in all of these different previews that they've shown, that it just blows my mind.
So, to bring it all in for the actual listeners, to give a actual depth when you say universe, can you start from the most basic building block to the farthest that you can go to give the vastness of what you're trying to describe?
Oh, yeah, man. All right, so you have a planet that revolves around a sun. Multiple planets revolving around a sun equals a solar system. Multiple solar systems all clustered together, that equals a galaxy, I believe, or something like that. And then all these stars together in these galaxies can equal these clusters of galaxies, and so on and so forth. But anyways, when you look at a general map of the universe, and you think that people tell you all the time, when you look up into the sky and you see all those lights, those are all stars. In No Man's Sky, when you look at the map and you look at all the lights in the sky, all those lights are stars with their own solar systems and their own planets, their own ecologies and economies, if the right things are there to make that happen. And it's all randomly generated. It's all right there in front of you for you to explore. And the vastness is really hard to demonstrate without visual representation. But if you just think about, if I was to show you one star in the sky and fly on one planet that's around that one star, and then zoom out and show you the whole sky, and each of them is a star that we had a spaceship to go to, that's No Man's Sky. And it really is not only a beautiful concept, they're making a beautiful game. It looks immersive. Whatever the engine that they're using to build it on a graphics level is looking absolutely wonderful. And I just can't speak enough about how those of us that have been into this world builder type game, this exploration of the unknown, it's all procedurally generated, similar to Minecraft. I know I got into the version of Terraria called Starbound for the same reason that No Man's Sky is really just getting me amped. But not only that, but we've talked about the seamlessness in a couple of these other games. That's been something that No Man's Sky has been talking about now 2 E3s in a row. That they want you to be able to seamlessly fly throughout the universe using your warp drive, then flying in your spaceship, then flying down to the surface of a planet and walking around and doing whatever it is that you may want to do down on that planet. This is just one of those games that, guys, as we get more information, we are very, very excited about it. And we want to send you in the direction of this game to get you excited as well. It looks absolutely immense and magnificently intense. I just can't wait to see what's coming from these particular developers on No Man's Sky. And it's going to be a PlayStation 4 exclusive, and they haven't given us even the smallest bit of information on when it's going to come out. I really can just go on talking about the vastness of No Man's Sky forever because of the fact that it seems like the game goes on forever. But we just don't have enough time or digital storage space to do that. Next up on the list, we were looking at a little bit about this new Tomb Raider that's coming out. And Tomb Raider goes way back for me. And I don't know about you, but it's one of my favorite games. So tell me a little bit about this new Tomb Raider they're talking about.
All right, man. So November 10th of this year, Rise of Tomb Raider will be released. And like you said, playing from like the original Tomb Raiders of how interactive you were with the environment, even though it was a very simple game back then, you still got to traverse and explore these vast environments that were ancient or old or whatever have you. In the new Rise of Tomb Raider, the environment and the character model are pristine in every way. It's over the top in every standard that you can think. When it comes to muscle depth, how environments will affect you, your look and your demeanor, including fighting, and any type of visual real-life effects will affect her look. That's dirt, grime, dust, sweat, blood, snow. It doesn't matter. It's going to affect how she looks throughout the game, even in the cinematics. And speaking of the cinematics, gameplay to cinematics to gameplay is the most fluid that I've seen in any of the games at E3 so far.
Man, when you're talking about that gameplay, it's just so smooth. It's like watching a movie. I remember people telling me how Uncharted was like watching a movie, and I think that this is going to be right up there like that. That if you've got a girlfriend that doesn't like you playing video games all the time and doesn't consider that hanging out time, she would consider this hanging out time. She would want to watch you play this Tomb Raider game. And just like you said, man, hyper-realistic graphics. Hyper-realism in the graphics and the gameplay.
Me and Josh both sat down before we started the podcast to go ahead and get a look at what the gameplay looked like, and he is not lying. If I cannot and he cannot stress enough that it is actually like watching a movie. Between the decisions you make, actually, just go ahead and look it up. Look up Rise of Tomb Raider gameplay E3 and on YouTube, and you'll be able to find it. It's like maybe 7 to 10 minutes long. You will not be able to tell the difference between the traversion in cinematics. Everything is so fluid that it's almost like you're not even playing. It's like if they took every idea from God of War or Uncharted or any games like that, and they gave it a true root source. This game should have been it.
Oh, yeah. Well, really, it's just the culmination of the evolution of the combat system in games like that. And I just feel like they're doing a magnificent job on this game in particular with it. It just fits so well together. You were talking earlier when we were talking about the different areas that you go. The immersion even goes so far into these temples and things that you're going into. They all feel hundreds of years old. It's like walking through an Indiana Jones movie. And what is Lara Croft if not the the female Indiana Jones. And really, in my opinion, I was far more interested in Lara Croft as a child than Indiana Jones.
I really like the visuals that they put in this game. Like you said, going through any type of tombs or any type of the temples really does bring that adventure feel. Not to mention, it will be like the most recent Tomb Raider. You'll be able to interact with your environment a lot. You'll be making bows. You'll be hunting and gutting deers and eating them to stay alive.
More
almost
world
like
builder.
Metal Gear Snake Eater.
Right. Like I just said, more of that world builder. It's just a consistent theme throughout E3, and it damn well should be. It's thoroughly improving every single game. Whether or not we mention it on the podcast this evening, it's thoroughly improving every single game at E3, whether we're mentioning it or not.
So enough about Rise of Tomb Raider. Why don't you tell me a little bit, or a lot, about Kingdom Hearts 3?
Well, all right, Kingdom Hearts, honestly, man, I could in particular, but one could do a Kingdom Hearts podcast forever and talk at length about Kingdom Hearts the entire time until you don't want to do that anymore. There's so much backstory and so much information in Kingdom Hearts, and I think that's why it's built the fandom that it has. The new Kingdom Hearts that's coming out, though, is going to be something different entirely, in my opinion, because it's bringing these stories together. It's bringing in this whole idea of seamlessness that it seems like these developers are going for, to where they want you to just feel like you're playing whatever story it is that you're watching. And it's not a game based on that story, but it is that story in its entirety. They're bringing these worlds to life. And I think that's what Kingdom Hearts has always been about. And so they're just building on top of that idea yet again. I don't know if you played any of the Kingdom Hearts in the past, but they're just making the combat engine better and better and better every single time, in my opinion. Now, I've only played 1, 2, and 3. What about you?
I have only played 1.
1 and 2, sorry.
I've only played 1, and to be honest, all the other ones I have watched over someone else's shoulder, not for the simple fact that I don't like Kingdom Hearts, but because watching Kingdom Hearts and playing Kingdom Hearts is almost exactly the same thing to me.
Well, luckily, you must not have been watching somebody that was getting their grind on, because it can be a very, very grindy game. But I completely agree. If you're just going for the story and you're just following the linear path that you can, yeah, it's really fun to watch.
Mainly the cutscenes in the end.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I can't fault you for your ability to stomach somebody playing to watch a good cutscene, as the Final Fantasy fan that I am. But with this game in particular, they're taking this combat system, which has always been very hack and slash, with a mixture of your RPG elements of casting and special abilities, and then they bring in these over-the-top fireworks versions of special abilities that have been almost unique to Kingdom Hearts, in my opinion. And not only that, but the combat has always happened in a very live-action pace, even though you have the RPG elements of casting and menu selection throughout the games. So when we're talking about this new version of Kingdom Hearts and their combat system, it really just, in my opinion, seems like they're taking everything that they've done right and they're doing it right again. And it was fun last time. It's going to be fun this time. And then they're adding in your ability to traverse the world. It seems like the world is going to be much more interactive based on where you can go. I know I felt like in most of the other Kingdom Hearts games, I was always running up against a wall and trying to find the secret door in the corner or whatever. This one seems like they're going to move on from that and give you a lot more of an ability to just go about the world freely. And not only that, but I've seen in the one gameplay thing that I did see, they had this boss fight that just seemed spectacular. And if the boss fights are going to take those elements of reaction button mashing as well as the fighting that came from the old Kingdom Hearts games, they're going to really hit a home run with that. And it just seems like they're expounding on a story that's been good enough to make it longer than any other video game story other than some of the other JRPGs and things like that that have come out similar to it. So this Kingdom Hearts 3, for the Kingdom Hearts fans, it's going to be wonderful. If you're not a Kingdom Hearts fan, maybe you're not getting nearly as excited about it, but if you take anything from this, go and try out a Kingdom Hearts. It's a lot of fun, and this is a really good version of this game that's going to come out, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a lot of fun. And one thing that I want to mention about Kingdom Hearts before we move on from it is that the music in this game has always been wonderful. The scores, I've had friends that have bought the soundtracks and listened to them and still listen to them. They're just wonderfully made games and just a magnificent world to participate in, and they bring it to life so well. So I can only imagine that they're going to do it again with this one. And like I said a second ago, if you're into the story, the storyline in this is going to be great. It's going to jump off and be just a continuation on everything that we've always loved. One thing that I saw that really kind of caught me off guard was this Hitman game. Now, I know you've played some Hitman in the past. I played maybe 15 minutes of a Hitman game and decided I did not like it. This one looks really, really good. Why don't you break it down a little bit for me?
All right, guys. For anyone that enjoys Hitman or Splinter Cell, will enjoy this game to the fullest. Hitman World of Assassination will be on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. The way that they have done this game, and of course you introduced me to this concept, was the constant new updates and content download from player feedback. The new content will come and go and will have time restraints on it that will cause an ever-breathing world. Every NPC has a name in this new one, and every room is accessible. So, for the first Hitman, to the second one, to the third one, we all know the people that have played it. For every game that has come out, it has become more sandbox. It has become more options for the player. At this point in Hitman, it's an unlimited amount of improvising and countless ways to infiltrate. If you can think of a weapon or an outfit or a way into a building, you can do it in this game. Not to mention the online play, Josh. Guys, you can share assassinations now with one another online. So let's say that you have an assassination that's extremely hard, or you would want to challenge your friend, or vice versa. They can send it to you. And if it's an event that is within a 48-hour time restraint, it really causes everyone to constantly play with each other. It creates an almost competition in World of Assassination.
Well, when you say like a 48-hour constraint, that's really something that is blowing my mind about this game in particular. The developers have said, like you said in the beginning, that they're going to put out more and more content as people play the game, so that the game's always changing. Not only are they going to put that content out, but some of it's going to be limited. In fact, the majority of it, the way they make it sound, is going to be limited. So some of these new assassinations that they build for you are only going to be available for a certain amount of time. So you might put the call to arms to your friends and say, hey man, I got a headshot on this guy in 15 minutes by climbing up this ladder and waiting for him. And then your other buddy comes through and says, well man, I walked right in and hit him in the head with a tomahawk. You know, and it's just almost like a game of horse is the way I heard it put on one of the breakdowns that I heard today. And that's going to just keep people coming back as long as their friends are coming back. And if you and your friends get involved in playing a game together, really and truly, I've had some of the greatest times playing utter crap games with my friends. And so they're talking about not only putting out a game that's going to be great to play with your friends, but it's going to change as you play with your friends. It's going to constantly be coming out with different stuff. And if you're in this game and you're giving these developers the money to keep doing the hard work that they've done to put the game out in the first place, you're going to end up with more content that you like. And that's the type of developer that really makes me happy to call myself a gamer. And if for no other reason, I'll go out and buy their game. If I can say anything about these guys, I've never been sold on a Hitman game before in my life, and I'm getting sold on this one for sure.
I really like how player feedback is actually going to affect the content and the new updates that they give you.
Right.
So, enough about Agent 47 and his famous assassination, let's move on to the new Final Fantasy VII Remake. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that, Josh?
So I recently, well, not recently, as soon as it came out on Steam, picked up the Final Fantasy release on PC, and I was so excited I went and got Matt out of his room, and I said, hey man, I just bought Final Fantasy VII on my computer. I played it. I had a great time with it and loved it. But I said to him, I was like, man, does this mean they're going to be remaking this game or something? And then lo and behold, here at E3, we get our first look at a video that just makes any Final Fantasy fan's mouth water as soon as you start seeing it. It's going to be a beautifully remade version of the Final Fantasy that got so many of us into Final Fantasy in the first place. The story of Cloud is just magnificent in every iteration that I've seen it. From the Advent Children movie to some of the games that have come out for the handhelds, it's just that iteration of the Final Fantasy story was spectacular. And they're going to redo it on the PS4, which I believe at this point in time is putting out impressive enough graphics to do it all over again for us. Because the first time I sat down and played through Final Fantasy VII, and I know this seems crazy, but at the time, it was impressive for me as a child. And it took me, it grabbed hold of me, and it was the first video game that ever made me cry. And so they're remaking something that's so personal to me, and it's going to be wonderfully done by some of the original people that were involved as far as I can tell. And it just, I just don't have any more words other than I'm so excited that they're remaking Final Fantasy VII. And I will buy a PlayStation 4 for Final Fantasy VII.
So, from the nostalgia of Final Fantasy VII and the cinematic trailers that it had, even back in the day, to all the way to something like Advent Children, how would you say the cinematics in this new game look?
Man, it's wonderful. They have the same feel that the old game had when it came to being in the city and how all the smoke was everywhere, and it seemed like everyone in the slums was just real gritty and downtrodden. Those games were really just art projects. And so if you're going to remake it, you've got to remake it with an art project, and make it that same thing. And I really feel like they are. And it's just going to be wonderful. If I have anything to assume based on one cutscene, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was never a Final Fantasy VII fan. Sad to say, I hope a lot of people don't hate me out there, but Final Fantasy VIII is what grabbed hold of me first, and then I actually went from 8 to 10, and then I went back to 7, and the greatness that 7 is didn't grab a hold of me because I should have started earlier in the game. I really should have started on 7, and I hate myself for not starting on 7 because of the entire grandeur of everything.
You don't have to feel like I don't think that 7 was the best introduction. It meant a lot to me, but I know multiple people that will claim that that's not the case. And to say that you came in really on 10, you skipped from 8 to 10 and then went back, 10 was a beautiful game. And I said it before we were recording that I feel like 10 is the one that the old school Final Fantasy and the new school Final Fantasy players share. That they say, yeah, that one was awesome. And I think that it should be praised for that. So it's not so much of a negative thing. I don't think anybody would judge you for it. But I think that this type of a remake is going to make those characters mean to you the same thing that they mean to some of us. There was one other thing that I wanted to bring up before we bring everything to a close, and it's that there's a card game coming out that really piqued my attention. I know competitive card playing isn't something we've really gone into great detail about in the podcast because I know neither Matt nor myself keeps up with really competitive card playing to a point that we would be justified in breaking it down in the form of a podcast. We definitely have talked to some friends about coming on and helping us with that, and in the future it will be a thing. But one thing that's going to be coming out that really I think we all should put a little focus on is the Elder Scrolls Legends card game. It's just really and truly, I think, because it's going to be free to play and it's Elder Scrolls, it's probably worth looking at. Because Elder Scrolls is rich in story and artwork, and card games are fun for their fluff text and artwork as well. And these guys know how to build mechanics, in my opinion. So I really would love to see what they're going to do. And if Blizzard's success with their card game, Hearthstone, is any indication of what other game developers are possibly capable of doing with card games of their own games, then this seems like something that could be a really fun prospect. So if you enjoyed Hearthstone or other games like that, this is one that you might want to look into.
Do you think that it's going to try to rival Hearthstone since they've already announced that it will be a free-to-play game?
I think that the reason both Hearthstone and this game will be free-to-play is because of how they aren't really hinged on whether or not it's going to rival one or the other. It's something that I think that the developers as people enjoy, so that they wanted to put it out. If that, you see what I'm getting at there?
Yes.
So I just feel like that's the reason. And if you're like myself, or I know you feel this way, that you enjoy competitive card playing, it's something to look into. Even if you're not into necessarily competing for sure, competitive card playing is fun to do. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, in my opinion. So that's going to pretty much wrap us up on covering E3 on day 2. I wanted to go ahead and say that we're considering doing possibly a supplement episode in the middle of E3. Don't bank on that, but if it's something you'd be interested in, definitely let us know, and let us know on our public forums. Get on the YouTube comments or get on the Twitter and let us know what's going on, because, you know, we're asking you guys a couple of questions now, and we want to know what's up. So we're going to continue watching E3, and there's so much more that we want to cover. So as we're doing that, just keep us informed.
I would also like to announce to the listeners that this is episode 10, guys. And me and Josh had a very serious conversation last week that this week we will start the groundwork for the website, getting the iTunes up, and the RSS feed all together.
Yes, you can be expecting that in the very near future. So if you've stuck with us through your data usage and your battery being drained on YouTube, we really appreciate that and can't thank you enough. But just rest assured that coming very soon, you're going to get the call right to your smartphone or right to your iPod or whatever it is that you're wanting to listen through. You can download it. You'll be able to share it so much more efficiently. So know that's on the way, as well as more E3 coverage, at the very least an E3 wrap-up at next week on Tuesday. So until next time, as usual, this is Josh.
And this is Matt.
And this has been the Call to the Brewman's Bottle.